zero, but their
Mr.
capabilities
Secretary,
at the lowest level
you
they've been in
stated
a very
that
long time.
on day 14 of this conflict, in the second week of the conflict, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Was that an accurate statement? Yes or no?
Iran's ability to challenge the United States of America at the level at which we're capable of.
That's not what I asked you, Mr. Secretary. You said on day 14, Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective.
A routine defense hearing quickly turned into a tense confrontation when Senator questioned Pete Hegseth over the cost of the Iran war and whether earlier claims about a decisive victory matched reality. As Hegseth defended the military operation and requested tens of billions in additional funding, the senator repeatedly pushed him on one question: were the promises made to the American people actually accurate?
General Kane, let me just begin by expressing on behalf of all Georgians our immense gratitude and admiration for the service members who are making tremendous sacrifices and conducting themselves with extraordinary selflessness and professionalism on behalf of the United States and our state's unified condolences and grief for the families of the 4 killed in action and our hope for a swift recovery for the nearly 100 wounded over the last 2 weeks. And thank you to you for your service to the nation. Mr. Hegseth, you're requesting roughly $68 billion for the department through the supplemental, correct?
67, yes.
And yesterday, your department stated publicly, quote, U.S. forces struck Iranian military command centers, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and air defense systems to degrade Iran's ability to continue attacking commercial vessels. That was a press release from your department. Is that a broadly accurate characterization of ongoing operations?
That sounds broadly accurate, yes.
On day 14 of this conflict, Mr. Secretary, day 14, nearly 5 months ago, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. That was on day 14 of the war. Was that an accurate statement?
They didn't have a Navy any longer. It was completely sunk. Their missiles were buried underneath a lot of their underground facilities, and their defense industrial base has been almost completely destroyed. So as far as a military assessment of Iran's capabilities, it didn't mean by any stretch of the imagination absolute zero, but their capabilities at the lowest level they've been in a very long time.
On day 14 of this conflict, in the second week of the conflict, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Was that an accurate statement? Yes or no?
Iran's ability to challenge the United States of America at the level at which we're capable of.
That's not what I asked you, Mr. Secretary. You said on day 14 Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Yes or no, was that an accurate statement?
What the American military has done to the
question?
Iranian military is a historic military defeat,
answer the
and they're
question
ineffective
under oath?
in that context.
3 weeks later, you declared victory. That was now nearly 4 months ago. 3 weeks after you'd already said Iran's military was destroyed and combat ineffective, you said, quote, Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory. You said Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. And you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Were those accurate statements?
It certainly was, on behalf of the men and women in uniform, a historic military victory over Iran.
Had Iran's military been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come? That was a statement that you made 4 months ago.
They had 160 naval vessels
in the
Blue Water
questions,
Navy,
Mr.
and they're gone.
Secretary.
Their Air Force is completely combat ineffective, and they don't have a defense industrial base. So describe to me a country that doesn't have an Air Force, a Navy, or a defense industrial base, and I will describe to you a country that does not have an effective military. It can lob missiles.
Mr. Secretary, you stated 4 months ago that Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. Has Iran's military been, for the last 4 months, combat ineffective?
It's been set back not just years, but likely decades.
You stated we had, quote,
build at the level it did before, not even close. It doesn't mean it doesn't have capabilities.
Mr. Secretary, you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Was that an accurate statement 4 months ago?
The main objective of this was to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Their main sites were obliterated. We're watching over them, and we're holding them at issue. If they don't give them up at the table, there's other ways we can take them away.
Early in the conflict
Iran will
on
never
day
have a
3,
nuclear
Mr.
weapon.
Secretary, early in the conflict, day 3, you said one of those core objectives was to, quote, destroy the missile threat, and as you restated on day 5, to, quote, obliterate Iran's missiles and drones. Those were clearly and repeatedly stated core objectives of the campaign, which 4 months ago you declared had been completed victoriously with every single objective achieved. Were those objectives achieved 4 months ago?
No one ever stated that every single missile was gone. Ultimately, combat ineffective means they're not able to dig them out of their UGFs and shoot
Had
at
the
us.
missile
It
threat
doesn't mean they
been
don't have
defeated
underground
4 months
facilities
ago?
where they put missiles in them and hold on to them because they're the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. So we never expected they would stop having capabilities to shoot. The question is at scale against an opponent like the United States of America, which went toe-to-toe with them and Iran couldn't.
You stated on March 8th, day 9 of the war, on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
So just to review, you will not answer whether your statement made on the 14th day of the war that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and made combat ineffective was a truthful statement to the American people as you sit here and ask for tens of billions more for the conflict?
Senator's time has
Had a
expired.
historic and effective military campaign against the largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Won't
and
answer
will
the
ensure they
question.
never
Senator
get a nuclear
Peters.
weapon, Senator.
This exchange quickly became about more than a military budget request. Senator began by recognizing the sacrifices made by American service members, honoring those killed and wounded during the conflict before turning his attention to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the billions of dollars being requested for the Pentagon. Hegseth confirmed that the Department of Defense was requesting approximately $67 billion in supplemental funding. That immediately raised the central question of the hearing. How much has this conflict already cost, and are Americans getting a clear picture of what those resources have accomplished? The senator first questioned Hegseth about statements made by the Pentagon regarding strikes against Iranian military infrastructure, including command centers, missile facilities, drone sites, and air defense systems. Then he moved to a more direct issue. Previous public statements made by Hegseth about the condition of Iran's military. Earlier in the conflict, Hegseth had described Iran's military as destroyed and combat ineffective. The senator repeatedly returned to those words and asked whether that assessment was accurate. Hegseth defended his statement, explaining that the description referred to Iran's ability to challenge the United States at a significant military level, not that every single military capability had completely disappeared. That distinction became the heart of the argument. The senator argued that the language used by the administration created a much stronger impression that Iran's military capability had essentially been eliminated. Hegseth argued that military assessments often describe capability in terms of effectiveness, readiness, and strategic ability rather than whether every weapon system has been physically destroyed. This is where viewers can see the larger debate happening. Military leaders often use broad terms like degraded, destroyed, or combat ineffective to describe an enemy's ability to conduct operations. But lawmakers often challenge those terms because public statements shape how Americans understand the success, cost, and purpose of a war. The senator then pointed to another statement made by Hegseth claiming that the operation achieved every single objective. He asked whether that statement was still accurate months later. Hegseth defended the operation, saying the primary objective was preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and argued that Iran's key sites had been severely damaged. But the senator continued pressing him on the difference between achieving a strategic goal and achieving every objective that had been publicly announced. That distinction is important. A military operation can accomplish some goals while leaving others unfinished. The question lawmakers often ask is whether leaders were too confident in their early predictions and whether the public was given a realistic assessment. That distinction is important. A military operation can accomplish some goals while leaving others unfinished. The question lawmakers often ask is whether leaders were too confident in their early predictions and whether the public was given a realistic assessment. The discussion then moved to missile capabilities. The senator pointed out that destroying Iran's missile threat had been described as one of the campaign's objectives. Hegseth responded that no one claimed every missile had been eliminated. Instead, he argued that Iran's ability to use those capabilities at scale had been significantly reduced. Again, the disagreement came down to expectations. The administration's argument was that Iran had been severely weakened. The senator's argument was that previous statements suggested a more complete victory than what was actually achieved. That is why he kept returning to the same question. Were the original claims accurate? The exchange also highlighted a common challenge in wartime communication. Government officials must explain military operations to the public while dealing with incomplete information, changing battlefield conditions, and strategic concerns. Critics, however, argue that transparency is essential when those same officials later ask Congress for tens of billions of additional dollars. By the end of the questioning, the senator's concern was clear. Before approving another massive funding request, Congress needs confidence that the public received accurate information about the mission, its results, and its remaining challenges. Hegseth defended the military's performance, praised the service members involved, and argued that Iran's capabilities had been significantly reduced. But the senator argued that the administration's previous statements created expectations that did not fully match the reality being presented months later. And that is what made this hearing important. It was not only about Iran. It was about accountability during war, how leaders communicate success, and whether Congress has enough information before committing billions more in taxpayer money. Because when the United States enters a major conflict, the questions are always the same. What was the mission? Was it achieved? How much did it cost? And did the American people receive the full truth along the way? Subscribe to Capital Breakdown HQ for more congressional hearing breakdowns, political analysis, and accountability-focused coverage from Washington.